Well, hi, and welcome back to MR Realities, a audio podcast that my good friend Kevin up in Tokyo and myself, Dave McCaughan, put together, where we talk to leading experts around the world on aspects of market research. Today, our podcast is a little bit different because our guest, Costas, is not actually a market researcher. He is a designer and does some amazing work with his company, but he's also become famous over the last half dozen years for a series of books he's put out called the Grumpy Innovator series. And in the Grumpy Innovator, he basically talks about, as somebody who tries to innovate and lead the design of innovations for clients, the things that upset him about clients, marketing, market research. And we thought it'd be interesting to hear what he has to say and maybe talk about some of the things that gets him grumpy about using research and might help our listeners figure out how to do things better. Kevin, what have you got to say?
Well, hello, and thanks for coming. I guess to start off, could you pronounce your name for us, as you do?
Yes. Well, if you would read it out of my passport, it would say Costas Papaikonomou, which I guess is easiest just to abbreviate to Costas.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I used to work with a PhD mathematician from Athens named Costas many years ago. So that name is familiar to me. Forget his last name now. We fell out of touch, unfortunately. I think he's probably doing something worthwhile with his life now and has a need to communicate with me. But, okay. So could you give us just some background about yourself beyond what Dave has mentioned, and just very quickly, who you are, where you came from, what do you do, and so forth?
Yeah, sure. So, well, my name is Costas. I'm 45 years old. I do have a background in industrial design and engineering, which is kind of the first half of my career. Second half of my career, which is the past now 11 years, is, well, I'm one of the founders of a global innovation agency called Happen.com. And, well, I guess what we've been doing a lot of over the past 11 years is helping businesses innovate. And I guess what we do, it really boils down to helping them spot whatever, let's say, unmet needs or frustrations are left in their categories, and then coming up with a commercially viable solution. I do hear some whistling in the background. Is that feedback on my side?
I don't know what that is. I also picked up on that. It seems to be
Dave doing some bird feeding.
I was just doing bird impersonations, and I was about to do a kookaburra, so just let it go.
Okay, we'll forget that.
It's gone again. Yeah.
Okay, I'll lead off with perhaps an explosive question, given that Dave and I are mostly marketing researchers, and a lot of the audience of MR Realities are marketing researchers. To you, what is marketing research? What is your impression of it? How do you?
How long do we have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. So, well, I can tell, because we have, say, a data analytics and research team within our group, and really what it is, and what market research is designed for, is to help you make decisions. And if anything, it's best to describe in that sense market research by what it needs to do rather than what it is, because what it is could be many, many, many different forms. And I think well, if you go straight to what bugs me a bit about it, and why we actually ended up founding our own research team rather than using, let's say, many of the other agencies out there, is that everything seems to be so incredibly tool focused, and it's all about the next cool gadget. I remember when we started, there were prizes being handed out to the most exciting research tool, with no reference whatsoever to if it was any use, had it led to good decisions of any kind. And I think the biggest problem with market research in general is that it has gone to a complete, let's say, tail wag dog place, where the tool is seen as more interesting and more important than the actual reason it exists. And it's really quite funny, actually, because knowing this chat was coming up, if you go back to the history of what market research has been and what it was, if you go back 50, 60 years, every corner shop owner or manufacturer of products would know their customers individually. It was only when basically the markets grew to these sort of mass market approaches, but done by mass companies, that all of a sudden market research started coming into play as a discipline, working around models and trying to simplify the world. And now you could say what is changing again is that through social media and, let's say, the digital revolution, businesses can get back to the individual consumers, and everyone's confused because now market research is wondering, well, why do we even exist? What is our role? Have we become data analysts? Have we become portals to just manage social media channels? It's a really confusing time, I can imagine. But sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, Kevin.
No. You're saying things I think that need to be said, and I would say that I mostly agree with you. I think that from my perspective, a lot of the tools in terms of the methods, way of thinking, some very basic sorts of research must-know things are being forgotten and being being substituted by software, and things are getting more and more automated. I suspect that this is true in many other industries as well too. It's not just us. I think there's just there are a lot of programmers out there, and they're hungry, and they've got to come up with new stuff. Okay, so then I'll turn this back to Dave here, but I just have one more question then about innovation to get to the core of, I guess, your book series. What is it about innovation and design that gets you grumpy?
Well, I guess it's a couple of things. Well, enough to indeed write now 2 books about it. I'm probably going to put out a third sometime soon. But I guess it boils down to a couple of areas, like probably along the journey of going from not knowing what to do to having something that you can launch in market and that works. I guess one big area that gets me really grumpy is when I would say businesses, but of course when you say businesses, what you actually mean is people inside the businesses just work on the wrong things, just have no idea of what the business reason for that innovation is. Don't ask themselves, okay, once we launch it, what is it actually supposed to do? Is it supposed to win new markets? Is it supposed to just steal some share? Is it supposed to transform a category? Very simple questions, which you really need to know just in order to decide what track to then follow. More connected to research in, let's say, the innovation space is this. It seems just more and more difficult to get teams to understand that when you look for insights, when you look for those needs worth answering, they need to be relevant. They need to be relevant to your category and your remit of what you can do as your business, and not up in the sky abstract human needs. I mean, those don't need answering, not by laundry detergents or whatever products you're working on. There's also this, and I guess from probably my deepest frustration is speaking as a product designer. Originally, basically, I'm an engineer by trade. I make stuff. Is this what you see in the world of mass market innovation? Is that the innovation responsibility and the budgets usually sit with marketing teams and people who have very little connection to how things are actually made. And what that leads to is just this huge struggle to just come up with ideas you can actually make, or that are not science fiction. And very often you get into this conversation around, oh, but we need something disruptive. I don't care what our factories do. We want something different. But then, of course, well, 2 things happen. One, you realize if it's something that is so far off what your factories do, well, you might be able to launch it and keep it in market just for a short while, but you'll never be able to make money off it, and definitely not be in market for long. But also it gets to the core of what a disruptive innovation really is. And it has nothing to do with how radical the solution is. Really, disruption is, can you come up with a solution that takes away a big problem? It's the demand side where the disruption happens, because that's what leads to behavior change. I can go on for like an hour on this, but
Yes, my impression is that years ago, or not that long ago, that marketing researchers work more closely with the design people and particularly the engineers. But the industry has become more fragmented, particularly in the last 10 or 15 years, and you have specialized companies, some not even calling themselves marketing research or whatever, using any of the traditional labels to describe themselves, who are in that space. And that, when I started out, you did concept tests, you did product tests and all that. I worked a lot with bases and these sorts of things and all that. Maybe my entry into marketing research was unusual, I'm not sure, but now there are few people that know how to do that. It seems, when I try to, ask something, or someone comes to me with a request along those lines, and I hit them with some what used to be fairly basic questions, so you didn't need to answer. They don't understand what I'm talking about. So I don't know. How about you? In the space of your career, have you noticed something along these lines, or is this my perception? There's a greater distance than there used to be.
It's definitely become more fragmented or seemingly specialized, where in the old days, indeed, you would deal with one market research person who understood the market and had spent long enough in that market not to need, or basically to be able to make decisions that not necessarily were only driven by data, but maybe also a bit by gut. Whereas now you would see you need to have a long list of calls with anything ranging from, let's say, the retail researcher for Lithuania all the way through to the shelf expert purchase in the south of Wales, and all these people on their tiny little domains trying to tie things up, and also just making it unnecessarily complicated for that reason. Because again, we're not building rockets; we're doing things like laundry detergents.
So things are less streamlined than they used to be.
Way less streamlined. We're even within one and the same procurement team.
I was going to say you hadn't mentioned procurement yet.
Yeah, but just imagine if you but I can imagine it's really difficult for our clients, literally the people inside these organizations, to get anything done. Imagine if you've been commissioned by the very top of the business to do a breakthrough radical innovation that grows the market by God knows how many %. And it takes you 8 months just to get a new supplier onto the procurement system. You know you're not going to be able to do anything. And that is literally across the board that you would see that. No wonder that people, say, hammering up little prototypes in their sheds are passing some of these big companies left, right, and center. It's because they're just way more agile. And they also keep things simple. If you're in food, let's just, for God's sake, first make sure your food tastes nice before diving into all kinds of functional, say, millennial-focused ingredient stories. Just make it taste nice. That'll make such a difference. It's really, really, really simple in some cases. And I don't know, maybe it's this urge to make everything look like a science, even when it's not. There's some basic.
It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing you say that, because just this morning, somebody, I've got to be careful the way I describe this. Somebody had given me some samples of what will be seasonal flavors of a particular product that you would put in your mouth. Okay. Yeah. And they've already gone ahead. I mean, they are manufacturing these things, but they've given me some samples and then said, we'd love your opinion because the target market is people just like you. Yeah. So, and
what does that even mean?
well, you know, hold on a second. When you say people just like me, so you mean a roughly 60-year-old Australian who lives in Bangkok, has 2 adult children, a dead cat, etc., etc., etc. Right? What do you mean, just like me? Oh, well, you know, people that like this sort of product. What kind of product? Do you mean the original or these weird flavors that you're calling seasonal flavors? You know, and really, what do you care about my one opinion if you've already decided to manufacture the damn thing? I mean, you know. People do things the wrong way around somehow, and as you say, complicate stuff. Which goes back to, look, you know, let's dive into a couple of things. As I said at the beginning, big fan of your books. I truly do quote stuff, and for those, I'm sure a lot of our audience have not read, but please go online and order the Grumpy Innovator books. They're fantastic, if for nothing else, because if you've got to give a talk or a presentation and you need an opening line, these are just books full of great opening lines.
Thank you.
But in the course of them, and in the course of hearing you talk and our discussions, you've talked about this, but give us a couple of examples of where you see clients abusing research. Give us, you know, are there a couple of examples you can explain? You don't have to quote the company name, of course, if you don't want to.
No, well, I guess because again, it's positive intent amongst all the researchers I work with. That's for sure. There's no one out there actively trying to do research poorly. But it does come down to probably 2 things. One is that tail wag dog thing, where the tool becomes paramount because it's a tool that the business has chosen for, or it's the tool that the business makes money on. That it's only that particular solution that needs to be used to make any decision whatsoever. But what then happens is that you very often see the role of research, which is to help make decisions, which is to help lower risk making decisions is just done inadequately because the wrong methodologies are used. Where even for like the simplest changes in a product, like a flavor change in a food or a color change in any other product, huge pieces of research are done because no one trusts their own judgment anymore, or everything is just made just way bigger than it needs to be. For probably the wrong reasons. There might be a cynical side where if you would allow, as a market research team, to let your marketeers make tweaks to the products without passing your desk first, your role is becoming less important. There's probably some bad news coming there because, if anything, the market research, say, disciplines inside our clients are shrinking. And a lot of it is indeed done by marketing teams, by R&D teams, even by the sales teams themselves, because they have access to the same tools that the market researchers had a monopoly on. So sorry, I'm wandering a bit away from your original question.
No, but that's fine. So, I can remember, and I'm actually sitting here trying to flick through. I can't find the thing, but I can remember, in hearing you talk, you would often talk about the fact, and we hear all these. I'll step back for a second.
Yeah.
We hear all these misconstrued quotations, things like, the famous thing, Steve Jobs didn't believe in market research, or never used market research. Not according to all the money I see you getting poured into Apple, but anyway, et cetera, right? But one of the things I've always found interesting in hearing you talk is about the fact that, at the briefing stage. So, and you work with some of the world's biggest multinational FMCG companies, for example. But you get a brief, and the brief it's based around some piece of research.
Yeah.
But the piece of research is almost you can tell almost straight away the piece of research has been done to justify an opinion in some way, but it's not actually reflective of what might actually be people might want, as opposed to, well, this is what we can manufacture, or, I came up with this idea in the bathtub, so I think everybody wants it.
Yeah, that's the cover your arse type of research. Where do we even start on that? Here's maybe an example of how bad research, or ineffective research is maybe a better word, can be overcome by pitching it at the right level.
Yeah.
And this is actually one I can share because it's now a common story in the public domain. But this is from I think 3 years ago now, where we were working with a pharma business, OTC, in the cough and cold category, which is it's cough syrups, cough lozenges, etc. I mean, that's a market that hasn't changed for like 50 years. It's like dead, stale, there's nothing going on. And we had an ambitious client here who if I cut a few corners, what it came down to was, well, we need to grow ourselves a position in the UK market in this category, and if that doesn't work, we're just leaving the market entirely, period, because there's no money to be made here. And they'd done all their homework, they'd done all the research, they had huge stacks of quant and endless focus groups, and God knows how many Excel sheets stacked upon each other on you could say what the shape of that cough and cold market was, but they gave it to us saying, well, we have all this, see if you can find anything. And of course there isn't anything in there, but here's the thing, what we've realized, okay, this is nice and going on record, what we realized fairly quickly going through all that data is the one thing they hadn't done was talk to people who were actually ill. They'd, of course, done focus groups with people who were trying to remember what it was like to be ill. They'd done all their quant data. Because if you know how quant data is generated nowadays, I mean, it's sent out to surveys to people who don't give a damn about your category because they sit in panels being paid €75 a weekend to just filter through like 100 of them. It had no connection to actually people coughing, coughing. And all we did was really, we took like a handful, maybe a dozen friends and family. It was literally our London team calling friends saying, do you know anyone who has a cough? Do you know anyone who's sick in bed? Let's go talk to them. Find sort of what is and again, here's the thing. It's not about finding the answer, but it's finding that observation, that little sort of set of clues that brings everything else into perspective that you already know, and you suddenly realize what's going on or what's special, because that's what great insight is about, which is also the actual insight almost never comes from the research itself. It comes from understanding what the research is telling you, and going up a click. And one of the really simple things we found, it was so obvious. It was when people try to buy cough syrup, They just have no clue what kind of cough they have. They just wanted to go away. They don't know if they have a tickly cough, a chesty cough, a dry cough, whatever cough. And there they are in the pharmacist, probably coughing in their face, saying, well, what do you think it is? Or they're to buy cough syrup for their child. And there you go. So that was the big unmet need in the whole category, which everyone had been blatantly ignoring for 40 years, because the rule of the category is to do all these different cough types, which is also how all the research had been done. It had basically, the research was constructed around the structure of the category. And of course that makes sense, but then don't be surprised if you don't find anything new. So just by winding that up a little, getting some skin in the game, going actually all the way down to the people you're actually trying to sell to, and not the 100,000 you believe the market is, but like just 3 or 4 of them, and then spending some time, you find plenty of opportunity. So in the end, what we helped them do was launch a product which was literally one cough syrup for all coughs, and it took 10% of the market in the first year, literally in a market that hadn't moved forever. So there is always an opportunity. But
to do what afterwards seems like the blatantly obvious, right?
The blatantly obvious, yeah, and that's what market research should help you uncover. But it's become, I don't know, it's just
it does. You know, you remind me of a bunch of things. I mean, Kevin will recall one of our earlier sessions. We talked to our friend Praveen Shekhar in India, and he runs, amongst other things, some market research agencies that specialise in health issues. And he was telling us the story that one of his companies had done a ton of extensive work and research, lots of huge surveys for a condom manufacturer. And they'd gone into all sorts of details. But then he pointed out when they put together all these studies and they were looking for the one big final presentation, he went back and said to his team, but I'm looking at all these studies we've done, but has anybody ever asked any of these people if they have actually ever had sex? You know, and it sort of goes back to your point that sometimes I get what you mean, and you know, it's sort of interesting that today, you know, we all live in bubbles, obviously, you know, like media bubbles created by what we listen to, see around us, and that I think, and then of course what happens is you're asking sometimes people based on the perception of a bubble. And so, but actually that's not what it's all about. It's about how they really feel, or are they the right people to be asking, etc. So, yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, those echo chambers are, I mean, that's something we all have to deal with.
Yeah, we have to deal with
echo chambers. It's a nice analogy. That's what it is. You reap what you sow. Now,
you mentioned early on, Costas, about this thing that you and I have met at a couple of marketing research industry conferences and stuff, and you go to a lot of these big conferences, and there are literally still are a lot of awards like the Newcomers Awards or the new Tool Awards, and you know, they're not called that; they're called something else. I'm sure if in the English world, at least, if you called it the New Tool Award, you'd probably get arrested. But you know what I mean? So these things are still there, and I'm often amazed that, and I've been asked a couple of times to submit things for the, you know, the big new thing award. And you go, yeah, but we actually haven't got any successful stories where people have used it, and 2 years later we can prove that the results resulted in a 2-year, you know, benchmarking of success or something, right?
Yeah.
So, so with that in mind, I'd love to hear your thoughts about actual innovation and market research. Like, what do you think, you know, as an innovator, somebody comes up with this, what do you think market research should be doing to look for innovation?
So we'll definitely not go to too many of those tools for tools awards, because that's not really the most exciting thing.
Sorry, that's breaking me up now. I shouldn't have said that.
New tools by tools for tools.
Yes.
There's so many. Sorry, that's and I'm not even a native speaker, and that sounds funny. Well, I can tell you what we're working on. What we're really excited about is, and again, it's simpler than you would expect. So forget indeed about all the endless dashboards of radar plots and God knows what you can make through analyzing tons of data or endless surveys, seemingly making the presentation very sophisticated, but in practice always based on surveys And if anything, I mean, with having our own research team, I know the limitations of working with panels and sending out surveys, and the quality of the data is often appalling that comes back. There are two big developments that we're banking on, literally. One is the increase of using what we would call unprompted narrative. So instead of going out and asking people stuff where you get the echo chamber effect, is you just put your ear out and listen what they're talking about. And here's the great thing: if you work in mass markets like we do, people are talking about your stuff all the time. The thing is, they're not talking about the things you would expect them to talk about necessarily, which for a classic, let's say, social science market researcher might be threatening because they can't develop a hypothesis and then put out the hypothesis to check if it's true. No, what you basically find is people are talking about a whole range of topics, and they're doing it with passion, but they might not be the topics you would expect it. And here's the thing. So in my world, as a, let's say, product developer, as an innovator, I love that because I know people only get behind their laptops to write about stuff if they really genuinely care about it.
Right.
In the world of the classic, and again, the classic old school market researcher, that's bad because that's not representative. But then again, all I have to do is reveal sort of the panels and who sits in those panels who are actually now filling in all the surveys they're answering. Well, that's even more skewed, not being representative of anyone who really exists. So what you then realize is that, first of all, the people who are talking about your products are doing so with a huge amount of passion, and they're not talking about the topics you might think they would be talking about. But also that passion you can work with, because if you go back to that core of what innovation really is, it's about taking away a problem and bringing a good, nice solution in its place. You could say that's the basic emotions of what makes new things work. It's taking away a frustration and putting something exciting in front of people they would love to have and would love to shed their money for to buy. So what you're actually seeing in that all that unprompted, messy narrative on social media and product reviews, etc., is innovation briefs left, right, and center. And it doesn't really matter if you're working in snacks or laundry detergents or toothpaste or scented candles, for all I care. People are talking about your products in the thousands, and all you have to do is analyze what they're saying, as in, okay, what are they excited about? What are they frustrated about? What's driving those emotions? And let's go to work on it. And it really comes down to that simple. It's that simple. That's what I dare say. But the threatening thing is you have less control. You do not control what you're going to ask your consumers on whether they like it or not. And to your point of which you made earlier of doing research to just cover your ass, that's not possible anymore. You basically have to put your ear out and just do what they're telling you, rather than hoping you can push them in a certain direction.
In general, are clients doing more of this, or specialized innovation agencies, or
slowly but surely? Slowly but yeah, and it's probably because if anything, for us last year, 2017, we saw an interesting shift where I think the realization has come that a lot of the old school quant research doesn't really work, because all the advice coming out, or without naming competitors, but all the predictions of how well products will do in market if you launch them the way you tested them, they never work. I mean, they never work. The only reason products really work in market is if they really hit the consumer frustration and take it away, and if they're ruthlessly pushed by the organization itself, by someone who really believes it. That's what makes great innovation sort of go all the way through.
Yeah, companies, before social media, companies in FMCG in particular, but not only those areas, had they went by various names such as access panels or whatever, going way back, where they had people, often in the old days, they were housewives. They were talking about, these sorts of things, food and, those sorts of, laundry, whatever. They would listen to them and they would use them, and they were their own proprietary panel. I guess we now call those, MROCs, briefly, and now everyone talks about insights communities, but
Yeah.
the big companies that were excelled at innovation have been doing things like that all along. Now, I would think, and also the smart companies have been getting hold of sales data where it was available going back 20 years or further, longer, and looking at patterns and seeing what they might suggest in terms of opportunities for innovation, what is fading away, what isn't, so forth. But now with with social media and also the huge call centers and customer correspondence, which used to be on paper records only and not stored electronically, we have a tremendous amount of information that we could be using and are using, but I guess it's a question of people not knowing how to do it. One comment I heard in a private discussion I had a year or so ago with someone who was kind of in that space for a client, was saying, yeah, we want to do this, but we just don't have the people to do it. We find, you really need someone who knows that industry or can learn it, who knows, really a qualitative person, I think, and someone who's worked in innovation space. And there just, there aren't that many humans out there who can do it. So I think that's part of the thrust of you don't want this data to go to waste, so let's go to AI. We can't find the people, let's find the machines.
Yeah, it's it's funny you say AI, because we actually have we have a few people who are really good at this inside our own business, but also they're at limited capacity. I mean, there's not endless amounts of them, but you can actually emulate their decisions. So one of them is called Dave, and we have, for the times he's really busy, we also have the Dave bot, which is a piece of AI that makes some of the simpler stuff, simpler decisions, the same way he does. I mean, he developed it himself, so it saves him time. But to your point, it's an industry in transition, very much, and any industry in transition takes time to go from the old space to the new space. We do see quite a few of our, let's say, former CMI clients who are really experienced market researchers who are now losing their jobs because their teams are being shrunk. And the one message we can give to them is, well, reinvent yourself as a data analyst, because it's a lot like what we were doing before, but it's more of this age. And make that transition, because there's still plenty to do. But I think that the difference is it'll be much more based on just making better use of that data that is out there, which is not polluted by people who don't care about the product. It's not polluted by echo chamber effects of just answering because you asked. But it's all that wonderful, what I would call unprompted data of frustrations, of emotions, of happiness out there in the ether. And that's where the inspiration is. All you have to do is make sense of it. That's where I see the future, and that's where our business is going.
Yeah, and qualitative, there was always, traditionally, there were people who were exceptionally skilled in in-depth or focus groups or whatever, where the topic would be very, very general and free-flowing, and that was used very early on, and still is, in the idea generation.
Probably making a comeback.
Yeah, and I think again, it's a question of there aren't particularly something like that sort of qualitative research. There aren't textbook formulas that you can find and learn and program. There's something almost genetic going on, sort of like you either have it or you don't.
Yeah,
that sort of researcher, and I think it's a supply and demand problem.
It's a talent, definitely, and I think it's finding it. There are, I think, two things coming back from, let's say, the old days. So one is indeed more qualitative, but with purpose. When indeed let's say the big data guys have already roughly sorted out where to play, and then realizing that's about as far as you can go with the big data or with all the analytics. You still need the qual work, qualitative, face-to-face, the in-homes, talking to actual people who are actually using your products, to figure out where the granular stuff is, where the contextualized needs, where it's really clear the how, the what, the when, and the where the problems are. You need that. You need to do that qualitatively. You won't be able to take that out to that level from indeed.
That's been probably one of my frustrations. I'll turn this over to Dave to wrap up in a minute, but I see quantitative being, used consistently, and trying to be used as a substitute for this preliminary qualitative phase, and no wonder it fails. It was never intended to do that.
No.
There is overlap. Some qualitative and quant can be addressed. Some questions can be addressed by either, but there is some necessary separation, and it seems to be, you you got to quantify everything, and I don't know. It's just kind of weird. What seemed to me not common sense, is increasingly elusive.
Well, common sense is you only have common sense if you know the category you're working in
that's right.
well enough. And if you change categories every 3 years, or every 2 years, or every year, as an innovator inside a large organization working in marketing, then you won't have the time to really learn the mechanics of that category. So you rely on data all the time to make decisions, rather than having that feel being informed. And that's a really dangerous place to be.
Yeah. So
that's a perfect example. I mean, Kevin's heard me tell these stories many times, but it amazes me. Again, just recently, a particular beverage company that I'd tangentially done some work for rings me up and sort of says, Dave, I understand that you've done a bit of work in beverages with other companies. It's like 30 years with some of the world's biggest beverage companies doing their advertising and doing market research.
Yeah.
Oh, could you come in and maybe just spend, I loved it, 40 minutes on what you've learned about what works with beverages and doesn't work with beverages, because all of our marketing team, like 16 people, the longest serving person in marketing was 2 years. And so, of course, you go, I'd love to, but 40 minutes isn't going to hack it, because 40 minutes for the introduction sort of thing and a couple of examples. But it amazes me, first of all, that companies don't do more in terms of collecting their own history and their own experiences.
But it also shows disrespect for knowledge.
Right, and I was just going to say, and so for example, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I can imagine it is from my own experience, that there would be an awful lot of your clients or prospective clients who basically come to you with a project, but are they willing to just sit there and go, Costas, you and your team over the last X number of years have done X number of hundreds of projects. Why don't we begin by you just telling us, based on that experience, what are good examples of what works and doesn't work? Why would you think that, I always love, we don't use the collective memory of organizations.
That's true.
And we don't make enough effort to store that collective information, so when a key player leaves, what are you doing to download their experience into your system? Usually my experience is nothing. We'll buy them a drink as they go out the door. That's about it. So
I think that is changing in a good way, though. If I look over the past 10 years, when we started, almost any company we would work with, they would put a non-exclusivity piece of paper, an exclusivity agreement in front of us, which would basically prevent us of working not only in their own category, but every possible category that was held within the holding company, which basically meant we would go out of business, so we could never sign those. But nowadays, I think we attract actually a lot of business just from the fact that we have all this experience in food and beverage and home care and in pharma. I mean, there's only so many needs you can answer in those categories, and if you can already skip a lot of them just because you know whether or not they're fully fulfilled or not, you can get to the point a lot quicker. And that's changing. So our clients are definitely more interested in that history and that experience than they were a long time ago. It's probably just because they don't have the time to do it themselves anymore. I mean, I don't know a single one of our clients that have grown their teams. They've all shrunk their teams.
That's true. Well, I'm glad to hear that some are changing that way. Yeah. I got two things I want to finish off on. First of all is, you mentioned that, you might be doing a third book or something. So let me ask you this, first of all, are you less grumpy than when you wrote the first book?
Well, Dave, as you know, with age, you tend to...
Okay.
No, I must admit, I am less grumpy. It's just because I'm being worn down.
You've been mellowing with age.
Well, no. I was going to ask if in the course of writing the two books, did you get it off your chest a bit? Did that help?
Yeah, well, actually, you might notice. So I'm writing these books continuously. I'm basically pumping out little aphorisms and thoughts into the world And that's been my therapy for the past, 6 years. So definitely it's off my chest, but there's always new stuff coming onto my chest. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, hopefully after this session, some of our listeners are going to reach out and friend you on Facebook or something, because I can honestly say that one of the highlights of nearly every day is the Costas quote that comes up, which is, it's usually one of these things that you read and you sort of go, that's a bit quirky, and then you read it again, and then the laugh hits you. You know, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's nice to hear. It's nice to hear.
Yeah. So I don't know how you get time to actually run a business between pumping out all that stuff. You know. I've got one last question. So the last thing that I ask all of our guests, and is becoming a sort of meme that's going on its own, is, based on all your years of experience, all the things that you've done, the projects you've worked on, what's the one question that you didn't ask that you wish you had?
The one question that I didn't ask?
Yeah, that you saw coming out of a piece of research that wasn't asked, or that, you, in dealing with a client, you didn't ask, or whatever. The one question you really think, oh, I wish I'd asked that at the
time. Well, I think, there's one which I wish I'd asked on multiple occasions, which was, would you put your own money into this, my friend?
Okay.
Yeah,
enthusiasm
that's an important one. Yeah, talk is cheap. Bankruptcy normally isn't.
Yeah.
Kevin, if I think back over the time we've done this, and when I've used this now in a few conferences and stuff as well, I've never had anybody actually make that point before, which is probably good for Costas.
It tells you about how good business people, marketing researchers really are, huh?
Well, it's just the cynical reality is a lot of the innovation responsibility lies with people who will not pay for the failure of their innovation.
Yeah.
Their successor will pay for it and suffer, and that's why 3-year plans are rewritten every year, is because no one's being there to sort of suffer for their poor decision making. So, or not poor decision, but just because everyone makes bad decisions all the time. It's just, if you're not around to suffer for them, you'll make more.
Right. Well, it's a bit like famously the car marketing person, or automobile marketing person I was dealing with at one time, who we just finished a half-day seminar, tons of research, everything, but it was all built around the fact that in this particular country, they'd worked out that the life cycle, the buying cycle for a family to buy a new family car was, they basically replaced the car every 6.8 years, and they started the process of, from the time they first thought should get a new car to the time they actually took it home, was about a year and a half. And then the guy straight away comes out, so we need a new annual plan. What? Like we just talked about, it's a 1.5 year buying cycle, actual decision processes, and a 6-year buying cycle. What's this 1 year plan thing? Well, because that's the way we do it. Okay.
And you go home and you think, well, okay, that was worthwhile.
Yeah, that was great. That was another day I'll never get back. Yeah. Yeah. It's been great, Costas, as always.
Thank
folks,
you so much.
If you get a chance, let me just remind you, the books are called The Grumpy Innovator. I'm sure they're on Amazon and all sorts of other online stores and stuff, and well worth having a read. Thanks very much, Costas. It's been great. Kevin, we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. This has been excellent reality therapy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.